Welcome back to the Discover Potential podcast. My name is Nick, and in today's episode, I want to talk about the recent events and especially about how I think about subnet investing. So, this is not financial advice. I cannot give financial advice. This is just my personal opinion. So, take it or ignore it. It's the personal opinion of someone who's been pretty deep into BitTensor for the last year. So I'm not an OG, but I do think I have a pretty good understanding of many of the different aspects of it. So the objective of this episode is just basically to help people to not get fooled by influencers, by all kinds of people telling you to buy subnets because you can get rich, etc. Don't be fooled. Most people investing in subnets won't get rich. Most people will lose TAO, and I'm gonna explain why. First of all, TAO is very precious. At least it has the potential to be very, very precious. I don't know what you think that TAO could be worth in 5, 10, 15 years if it succeeds. Of course, it's a very big if, but most people would be pretty happy with the returns that just holding the TAO token might give if BitTensor succeeds, right? And we've had a lot of updates recently. I talked about them last episode. So if you want to have more details about Root Reborn and V440, I recommend you to listen to the previous episode. But in short, what happened is that basically very important upgrades or updates get implemented, often without any warning, and they can basically lead to a 20, 30, 40, 50% dump in the price of subnets in a matter of days. That's the extent of risk and volatility we're talking about with subnets, okay? So just for those, because this podcast is meant for beginners especially, so just to be clear, TAO is the general token for the BitTensor network. And you can, like I heard Const, the co-founder of BitTensor, who's called Jacob Steves or Const, say the following. You can look at TAO as the dollar, and all the subnet tokens are basically other currency paired with the dollar, like the euro, the yen, whatever. And this is how you can look at TAO. So you can just hold TAO or stake it to Root, and then you won't ever lose TAO. So if you have 10 TAO, in 3 years' time, you will still have 10 TAO or even more TAO normally because you get some APY. You could, however, try to find the big winners, because TAO can only succeed, in my opinion, if some of the subnets win pretty big. So, for example, Mark Jeffrey, someone I respect a lot in this ecosystem, he thinks BitTensor needs a breakout subnet. This is needed in order to really attract capital to BitTensor. That's his point of view. And so many people want to find this next breakout subnet because the price of the subnet could go up tremendously in theory, okay? However, I have another example I want to give you. You can also have a look at the TAO token as Bitcoin, and all the subnets are altcoins. Do you know many people who got rich by buying altcoins instead of Bitcoin? I don't think so. Most altcoins go to zero, and most people would have been much better off just buying or DCAing into Bitcoin rather than trying to find the next gem in the altcoin world. Okay, and yes, it's true. Maybe some of the top subnets like Shoot or Targon or Score could become the Ethereum or Solana of BitTensor. But this is very, very uncertain at this point. Barry Silbert, he looks at BitTensor like the internet in 1993. God knows which company's subnets will succeed in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time. Maybe none of the subnets currently building on Bitensor. So even though the TAO token could become very precious, the subnet tokens that are currently there don't necessarily have to. Okay, this is a pretty controversial take. I think many people at least hope this is not true. Many people hope that at least 10, 20, 30 subnets that are there right now on Bitensor will become very successful. And I hope that too. I only say this is far from certain. One of the scenarios that I consider is the following. In the near future, Bitensor, or the TAO token, I should say, gets a big increase in price, maybe times 5 or 10 or whatever. And that will attract a lot of capital to Bitensor and a lot of attention. Much better teams, much more talent, even bigger companies might get interested in Bitensor and start building subnets. And they might just be better at it than the current startup teams or subnet teams, right? I don't say this is going to happen, but this might happen. So that's why I say be careful with subnets. Then I want to highlight a message and a recent conversation between Simon Kidd and Mark. How's he called? Mark. I don't know his last name. Like the two guys from DSV and Revenue Search. Because Mark, he wrote a tweet this morning, I believe, or yesterday. He basically mentioned several flaws or challenges of Bitensor. And I really liked his post. I think there were some very fair points he made. And something he said is like, it's weird, right? That quality subnets like Babelbit, Gin get deregistered, whilst many other subnets doing nothing or have prices much higher and don't get deregistered. Would this mean that emissions or evaluations are not perfect or perfectly organized yet? And he got quite a lot of critique. Some people said, okay, well, the market has spoken, the market is always right. So if Babelbit wasn't able to get a higher price, it means that the market has decided they are not worth it. His point was the following, and I think this is a pretty strong point. Many successful companies like Tesla would not succeed on Bitensor because it takes years and years to get a revenue and to become successful. And if the market focuses so much on revenue, for example, we are basically getting rid of subnets that we should basically continue to have. And it's of course a bit more nuanced because the prices are not just based on revenue. Okay, there are many metrics people look at. So yeah, but I'm not going to comment too much on all his points because there are many points, and I can highly recommend the revenue search episode of today, the 5th of August, because Simon and Mark talked about all these concerns, and I think many of them are very valid, and at least it's very interesting to hear his points of view. But I already mentioned this in earlier episodes, and I think Mark would agree. Some, and maybe even many, subnet prices seem completely random or seem unfair or incorrect. Okay, and I want to give you some examples. Ridges, I already mentioned this in the last episode. It became the number one subnet with a price of something like 0.095, I believe, TAO per token. And it's gone down all the way to 0.01, okay? From 0.09 to 0.01. Then you have Actual. This thing just came out of nowhere. Apparently the founder is a very talented guy and trusted by many people, but there's no working product yet, I believe. There's no website, there's basically nothing. Just a face and apparently a lot of trust of the market in this guy. And it has a price of 0.05, so it's in the top 10. To me, this is just ridiculous, personally, even though it might become a huge success, okay? But you know why? Because it first has to prove that it's worth it, right? To me. Well, maybe that's just me. But other subnets like Babelbit, they don't even have, like, Babelbit's price is about 0.002, okay? So it's like 20 times lower price And it's like the team of Baalbet has been building. They have actually real results. They have achieved quite some impressive things, in my opinion. And yeah, yet the market still doesn't value it. And I don't say the market is wrong. I just say it's odd, and it's at least very hard, I think, for investors to understand why some of these valuations are how they are. And especially this Regis example, is also meant to show just how quickly the market can change its mind. So, like literally 2 or 3 months later, the market can say, okay, now it's worth nine times less than a couple of months before. So yeah, that's the volatility we're talking about here, right? Yeah, that's basically just my warning to beginners. Like, yeah, of course, if you're a degen, a trader, or whatever, yes, of course, there are some people who manage to basically earn TAO by trading subnets. Okay, I personally don't think this is very good for Bitensor. What Bitensor is trying to build is really basically the S&P 500 for AI or digital commodity startups. And it would be good when these subnets would become investable instead of just tradable, right? And many people like Simon Kid say, like, right now, for institutional money, Bitensor is not investable. I would disagree. I would say subnets are not investable, but the TAO token is very much investable, because the TAO token doesn't really care. And also, as an investor, you don't really care if one subnet blows up or whatever happens with all these upgrades, as long as you believe in the overall story of Bitensor, and you have a conviction, or you hope that the vision that you have for Bitensor will unfold in the future. And so yeah, Bitensor is investable, but just invest into the TAO token. And with the recent Root Reborn update, if you stake it into Root, the validators, they actually curate baskets of subnet tokens. So they actually are the capital allocators or the hedge fund managers in a certain way of your capital without risking your precious TAO. Okay, so let them do the job if you're not comfortable. There's absolutely no need to invest in subnets, in my personal opinion. And as I mentioned before, I think most people that try will probably just lose TAO doing it, because it's very volatile. That would be my recommendation for beginners. No financial advice, but please don't fall for the scammers, for the influencers claiming to get rich quickly by investing in this new shiny subnet or whatever. Just educate yourself. Only stake the TAO that you can afford or that you are willing to potentially lose into subnets. If you have 10 TAO and you think TAO will become very valuable, don't stake a single TAO or RAO, which is I think 1 millionth or something of a TAO token. It's basically like Satoshis for Bitcoin, but then I think even 10 times or so smaller. If you are more into, if you like risk a bit more, stake 10% or 20% or whatever you're comfortable with. But as I said before, it's not necessary. TAO can be seen as Bitcoin, and all these subnets are more like altcoins. And also another thing I can recommend: follow the big players, like the institutions like Yuma, which also is the top validator, or one of the top validators, I believe. Like, when you look at their funds, because they have different funds, they concentrate most of their TAO into the blue chips or the top 10. Okay, so I think they do this for a reason. I know they do this for a reason, and I think it's pretty smart to do a similar thing. So instead of staking your TAO into very high volatility, lower bottom subnets, don't stake the majority of your TAO into the top 10 subnets. Okay, I'm not going to give more advice. This is not the purpose. I'm not going to give investment advice here. I just want to make this clear for people who are new to the ecosystem. Like, first, it's very risky to invest into subnets, and second, in my opinion, it's not even necessary to really benefit a lot if the project called Bitensor succeeds, right? because the TAO token itself might become extremely valuable if BitTensor succeeds, right? So I hope that this message has some value for some people, especially for newcomers. If you have questions or what, you can always reach out to me. You can find my email address on my website. I'm always happy to discuss and also to learn from other people about their vision. Last thing I want to say, some people who make the right choices in DTAO, in subnets, will benefit probably massively in the coming years. However, many people will not, and just like altcoins, there might be very brief windows where all these subnets go up a lot and then followed by months or years where they go down. I actually don't know if this is true. I hope actually this won't be true. As I said before, what I hope is that BitTensor becomes more investable thanks to these upgrades. And I want to give you this scenario. Think of these root validators as hedge fund managers, and they basically have funds, and every fund can be a little bit different. I think most top validators will have most of the TAO staked into the top 10 subnets, but it can change. And my hope is that it will basically reduce volatility because of a consistent buy pressure of the selected subnets. Maybe this will lead to a more stabilized environment, a more stable environment where subnets can just go up instead of just being like this yo-yo, like it's been for the last 6 months or so. But I actually don't think we're there yet. It's still so early, right? So maybe if BitTensor succeeds in a couple of years, it will be more like this. But at this stage where it's so young and where it's so easy to increase the price or decrease the price by selling or buying subnet tokens because of the low liquidity, I think we ain't there yet. But maybe in a couple of years we will get there. And this is actually one of my hopes. I hope that we will get, like, I don't know, in 5 years or so, to a situation where you have basically your top 10 or 20 whatever subnets, and they will see more steady growth, like the 10 biggest companies on the US stock market, for example. No 100% increase per year, but maybe, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, depending on the year, of course. This, I think, would be very healthy for BitTensor, but I don't think we are there yet. I think we'll see periods of very high volatility still, despite all these changes, and periods of very high growth, of price increase, followed by periods where people take profit, rotate all their profit back to TAO, and this means they sell their subnet token. And this is what I mean when I say most people probably lose money trying to do the subnet game, because most people don't follow TAO closely enough, and like subnets can just go down 20, 30, 40% in one day because of the low liquidity. So it's very hard to get out in case of a bull run on subnets in time, especially if you get in a bit late, right? So, well, without going too much into all these technical details, I just want to repeat myself again. Consider TAO as Bitcoin. If you would have been happy buying Bitcoin this last decade or these last 15 years, then just buy TAO. If you would not have been happy enough, well, then try to buy some subnet tokens. But you have to realize that it's much, much more risky than buying TAO. So, thanks for listening, and I hope you learned something today. And see you next time. Bye bye.